I would like to convince you all that the key to cybersecurity is not technology, but process and management. Even though it all deals with technology in the same way that armies have tanks and stuff like that, the key to winning wars isn't being a tank driver, it is having the right generals executing the right strategies. In terms of cybersecurity, one of the key things that you have to have, in my opinion, is a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, who is a peer of the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. The reason that's the case is because they have to have a built-in difference of opinion about security. If you let the CIO, who's in charge of making sure things are running, if he or she also gets to decide what's secure enough, there isn't an inherent conflict that gets bumped up to the CEO or to the board to decide, how am I going to do this? How are we, the organization as a whole, going to protect the critical data? The other part of it is, once somebody is in a position where you can hold them responsible, they have to have the resources to do it, right? Enough people, enough money. We've already talked about where they fit into the hierarchy. And third, you have to decide what it is that's being protected. I will talk about that a little bit further down the road, but if you don't have somebody who's responsible, if they don't have the tools and the resources, and if they don't know what they're protecting, none of the other technical issues will make a difference. So try to keep that in mind. I'll be talking about more detailed things, but it's that big picture that is foundational to everything else, right? Organizations track their money, they track their HR, they do all the basics, and they need to do the same thing with protecting data and processes and money. Of security are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is the ability to control the data and who has access to it. It might also be, so I'm going to use data as a proxy for both conventional spreadsheets, but it might also be your money flows, right? You've seen a number of attacks on SWIFT endpoints. Attackers to a bank, Bangladesh comes to mind right now, and they then logged into SWIFT as if they were the bank and started sending the bank's money to themselves via various cutouts. So the money is a kind of data, but so are processes. I'll talk about specific processes later. And so keeping those things together, those three major things, processes, data, and money, right? That's mostly what gets moved around and stolen. So integrity is preventing something from being changed. Again, that could be conventional data. It could be how much is being charged on a credit card. The really old hack from, I think, the 70s or 80s, where hackers changed the amount of money that was billed to certain events, and they were just charging a couple of extra cents. But if you have millions of exchanges or transactions that each bills a couple of extra cents, it turns into real money. Availability. When you have access to something, is it going to be there? In a very human way, it's, did you bring your wallet? That's an availability issue. But also with computers or factories, can you control, can you stop things? So that's the three keys that we almost always talk about. There are additional issues that can come up in terms of authenticating who people are. Those are the three fundamentals: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I think one of the major things to focus on is the nature of a 0-day. And I'm going to put that out there because I want to persuade you that 0 days are not what you should be worried about. You should know that 0 days are there, but it's not the big risk that you have to deal with. Maybe the nuclear weapon of cybersecurity, but like with real nuclear weapons, they're fortunately used very rarely. So 0 day is a vulnerability, hardware or software, that is known to hackers, but not the manufacturer. So the manufacturer isn't taking steps to fix it. These vulnerabilities can be put in deliberately. I would argue in the vast majority of cases, 90, 95, maybe 99%, it's an accident. It's bad coding, it's bad planning, it's people not removing backdoors they put in order to facilitate debugging. Nonetheless, there's bunches of them out there, and they're being found all the time. In the last year, we've seen 0 days discovered in software that has been in the backbone of the internet, and everybody figured since it works so well, it can't be anything wrong with it. I think cybersecurity is very much like rocket science in the sense that it is very complex. None of it is highly technically challenging, but the complexity, the sheer number of things that have to function together reliably again and again, that's what makes it hard. In rockets, the keystone of it is weight, right? The more cargo you lift into space, the more fuel you have to add to the rocket. That fuel weighs something, so that increases the size of the rocket. You have a curve, a very negative curve, that makes the rocket bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. That's one of the reasons where on the space shuttle, astronauts were allowed 1 kilo, that's 2.2 pounds for Americans, of personal stuff. Weight matters. In terms of computers and technology, it's features. The more features you build into something, it is that there will be a 0 day or a hole or a vulnerability built in. That is that vulnerabilities are far more important than hackers. So rather than focusing on, who's trying to hack me, focus on what is it they will take advantage of to hack you. And that's where those vulnerabilities come in. I'm not going to this slide, and I will summarize it in the next slide. I would recommend that you all go out to Verizon's website and look up their DBIR, the Data Breach Investigative Report. It comes out every year. It's slightly different every year. They are a very good overview of what's happening. A lot of what I have observed and learned are a function of reading these for, I think, nearly the last 10 years. So it's a summary of 10 years of data breach investigative reports. The number is probably better than 99% of all intrusions. Did not require much skill. Out in a minute or less. They could have prevented fairly easily with sufficient attention to preventing them.